Hey everybody, we're going to go through a couple chapter 3 examples. So I'm going to get Thani open here. Here we go. I've got my Thani window, and I'm going to create a new program inside here. So this will be chapter number 3 examples. Now the chapter itself is on something called modules, or another name for them could be functions. You'll see it called functions in a lot of languages. But modules are a way for us to break up our programs into smaller pieces. Now, we haven't written any programs that are very long. Our programs maybe only have, between like 4 lines of code to 8 lines of code. So it's not a big deal. But as you go further, your programs will get larger and larger, and you will find a need to break them into smaller pieces. Now, these programs in chapter 3, we could easily do them without modules, but the idea is to start learning how to do it now so that we can use it later on. Okay. So before, when I did a line of code like this, if I said x equals 17, this was not in a module or a function. This was just in Python. So what we do to make a module is we use the keyword def. Now, usually there is a module or a function that's going to start every program, and that one is called main. So the way that we do it is like this: def main parentheses for a function, and then you got a colon at the end of the line. So I'll say print hello from main. I'm going to go down a little bit, say print goodbye from main. Now, the way Python syntax works is once you stop indenting, that's the end of the function. Okay, so I just put a little comment there, and I unindented, and I went to the left, and you can see that it is the end of the main function. So if I were to save this program, I'm going to save right now. I want to put it in my desktop. I got a Thani folder. There we go. I'm going to call this chapter 3. I were to save this and try to run it right now, if I do F5, you see what happens when I run? Nothing happened, right? Nothing at the bottom showed up. It didn't say hello from main. It didn't say goodbye from main. And that's because we put this stuff inside of a function, and we didn't tell the function to run, though. That's the one thing we've got to do. So down here, and you're going to want to run your main function always at the end. You see when I ran that one, see my at the bottom, my output, I get hello from main and goodbye from main. Okay, and I said this main, this is running the main function. If you try to put this up above, I'm going to show you a common mistake. If you try to put this up here, let's say, try to run main like this, and if I F5, I'm going to get an error. And you see that the error says, it says error name main is not defined. So it doesn't know what main is yet. The computer or the compiler, it just goes line by line. It comes through here. It's looking at 2, 3, it's 4. It's saying ignore all this stuff. It hits number 7. It says run main. It says, well, what the heck's main? I have no idea. Well, we didn't define it until a few lines below. So whenever we're doing modules like this, the best thing to do is just to drop your call. You start your main at the bottom. The main can be anywhere in the code, but the run of it should be like the last thing in your code. Okay. So I want to do one more function and kind of show you how functions run and they wait for each other to finish. So let's write another function called print message. So on this one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to print a couple of hello, goodbye messages. I'll put a little note here. This is the end of my print message function. Okay, so right now, if I were to run it, what would you think would happen? I told it to run the main function. Have I told it to run print message? No, nowhere have I told it to run print message. So you see, if I run right now, I get hello from main, I get goodbye from main. All right. Now, what you're usually going to have, what you're usually going to do is have main be the program that, or the function that takes care of everything. Excuse me. So inside main, I'm going to call the print message function. So from inside to here. So inside here, I'll call print message just like that. So calling functions are pretty easy. We just use the function name and we use parentheses. Now in chapter 3, they're going to talk about passing data along. I'm not going to go through that in this chapter. We'll talk about that later on in chapter 6. Okay, so don't worry about the textbook where it's talking about passing data. I'm not going to do that just yet. So right now, what I expect should happen is the program should start with main. This should run. Then I'll hit print message. It will wait until print message is finished before going on to the next one. So it'll hit this. It'll print out hello from print message. It should then print goodbye from message. Once this is done, it should send control back up here and saying, I am done with this one. Let's go down and finish off my main. So I will run that, and you can see down there where it says hello, goodbye, all that stuff. We get hello from main, hello from print message, goodbye from print message, and goodbye from main. Okay, so you see the order in which they go. So whenever you call a function, it's going to wait till that function finishes before picking it back up and continuing on. All right, so that's one good thing to know. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to start up a new program. And in this one, let's do some kind of a payroll example. All right, so in this one, I'm going to calculate a weekly paycheck, let's say. So what I'll do is I got to start with a main. So I'm going to put my main up now. I'm going to say def main. First thing I'm going to want to do in main, I put a little print in here. This is my payroll program. I say this is the end of main. And right here, I'll start my main up. Remember, we got to do that always, because if I don't do that, nothing's going to happen. So this is a real small program right now. It's just got a few lines in it, but I'm going to Control S, save it. Let's call this payroll. And let's go ahead and run it with F5. See, when I run, I get payroll program, just gets printed out. Now, when you go to do your labs this week, the book's going to say, design a modular program that does blah, blah, blah. It can be very difficult when you're starting out to figure out what functions you need. So what I would say is just break them up like we did last week. Remember last week? How did we break up our programs? We said step 1 was get inputs. Step 2 was do your calculations. Step 3 was display the output. Okay? So let's work on that. So let's start with an input. Let's write a function to do that instead. So I'm going to say def get inputs. What kind of inputs do we need? If somebody says, how much am I going to get paid this week? We need to know a couple things from that user. We need to know how many hours you worked, and we need to know how much you get paid per hour. So I'm going to ask those two questions. I'm going to say hours worked, and that's going to be a float. Input, And I'm going to need to know what is their hourly rate. And that would also be a float, right? Because somebody can might make, you know, $12.50 per hour. There could be some different places to it. So I'm going to go with it this way. A little note here. This is the end of get inputs. Okay. So if I run the program right now, will it ask those questions? F5, and you see, no, it does not, right? It just says payroll program. And that's because I haven't called get inputs yet. So for me to call get inputs, I got to go up here under get input, and it has to match, right? The case, the capital I, all that stuff has to match. So now main will start up. Main will say this is the payroll program, and the first thing main wants to do is then get the inputs. So to get the inputs, that will go down to my function. My 2 lines of code will run down there. It should save those 2 variables for us. So let's save it. Let's run it. And you see down on the bottom of my screen, it's now asking me how many hours did I work. So let's say I work 25 hours and I make $15 per hour. Okay, nothing else happened. And that's to be expected because we didn't do any calculations yet. All we did was get the input. Now, if I'm going to do some calculations, I'm going to need another function for that. So I'm going to push this down right here. The order the functions are in the program don't matter. As long as you call main last, it will not matter which functions are where, okay? So I'm going to put calculate pay, let's call this. So in order for us to calculate pay, it'll be called gross pay, right, before we take out any taxes. Gross pay is going to be equal to the hours we worked times the hourly rate. Let's not worry about anything else in here for right now. All right. If I were to run it, how many hours did I work? I said 25, 15. Nothing happened. What am I missing? I'm missing a call to this. Do calculations. I didn't call it yet, so I got to put that in here. Calculate pay. Okay, so main will start up. Main will get the inputs. Then after it gets the inputs, it'll run to the calculate pay function, which is just going to do my calculation. So if I run that right now, let's try it again, 25, 15, but you see I run into some errors. All right, so let's look at the errors down here. It says name, hours worked is not defined. If I scroll back up a little bit, it's not even going to show me, it's just going to blow up on that. Hours worked is not defined. Now, this is something that we call scope. When you declare a variable like this, hours worked, it is only visible in the function where you declare it. So calculate pay cannot look inside of get inputs. Get inputs cannot look inside calculate pay. That is something that we will learn later on. How do we pass this data back and forth? But for right now, I don't want to worry about that. I think that's a bit much for your second week of programming. So this is going to be a kind of a cheat, okay? I'm going to show you a way to make the variables visible everywhere. But again, this is not the best way to do it, but it will get us going, at least for this week. And this is going to be global variables. We're going to make some variables global. That means they're visible everywhere. Again, this is only going to be until we get to chapter 6. Once we get to chapter 6, I'll show you the proper way to do it. By then, we will have learned ifs and loops, and we'll have, we'll have a little more experience under our belt, and it'll be a little bit easier at that point. So to make this global, all we do is we use the keyword global, and then which variables do I want to make global? I want to make these variable's global. Hours worked, hourly rate. Now make sure that your case is exactly the same case as here, right? Capital W, for example. If I didn't put a capital W up there, it's not going to work. All right, so now let's save and run and see if this did work for us. I worked 25 hours at $15 per hour. The program exited successfully. So excellent, we're working. That means the gross pay got calculated. So the last thing to do up here is to run a, let's call it display pay function. So display pay, on this one, what we're going to want to print out is the gross pay. But is the gross pay going to be visible? No, the gross pay will not be visible unless I do that same trick I just did before, and that's to make it global. So I'll say global gross pay. Okay, so this will be visible up in here now. So display pay, I'm going to do something like print. Let's do hours worked. I'm going to format this. We learned this last week. I'm going to format my gross pay also. Remember what the gross pay, that should be 0.2f. Remember what how the format function works. You're saying I want to take this variable hourly rate and I want to make it 2 decimal places. The f means it's going to be a floating point variable, which just means it's got decimal places to it. Okay, so if I were to try to run right now, it wouldn't show me the pay yet, and that's because I didn't go up here and say display pay. I didn't call that yet. Okay, so let's try it now. I'm going to save it. I'm going to run it. And I'm getting an error. Let's see, on line 22. Oh, somehow I got a 0.2f over here. I don't know how that happened. That 0.2f, we shouldn't be over here. If you did the same, then get rid of that. That was a mistake. Let's try it again. I'm going to run. How many hours did I work? I worked 25 hours, $14 per hour. And you see it called my display pay, and it's showing that it's 25.0 hours at 14.00 hours per hourly rate, and that's going to come out to $350. Okay, so this is what your programs will look like for this chapter. Okay, you'll have a get inputs, you'll have some kind of a calculation function, and you'll have some kind of a pay function. The book won't specifically say to write those 3 functions, but just make sure you do that. You got main, and main's going to be the one doing the work calling those 3 functions. All right. So that's what I wanted to get through for today. So you should be able to work on those labs. If you got any questions, let me know.